Did you have some news?
Yeah.
Oh,
Be grandparent to a baby girl. Yeah.
oh my goodness.
Yes.
When is that?
Late September. Yes.
Oh boy.
Yeah. We're in Chicago area, so it's not as far as I
No,
could go,
it
but
isn't. It isn't.
I'm sorry that that's
Yeah,
so far
you
away.
should be sorry.
Yeah. Oh, it's so fun though.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody's doing
Everybody's good. You got
Yeah,
your
with two
news?
boys.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah. See the oldest boy. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Yeah.
Yeah. Fine.
I'm sure.
Don't have any. Not been there so far.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wonderful.
And then when it's going on.
Yeah, I do. You know.
Yeah. It's a nice time. Yeah.
It is, yeah.
Very
Beautiful.
I think that the air tunnels. Oh wait, she's in it. You're in Chicago. Chicago too. Yeah.
Reason.
Where did they live? Oh. In Chicago.
They're in,
Well, they, yeah. Yeah. Oh, even.
Thanks for coming. I'm going to talk very long, but I thought I'll tell you a few things. So I think many of us are sad, angry, frustrated with things that are going on in the country. And not too long ago, I actually watched a speech Robert De Niro gave, like a 7-minute clip. And he asked questions like, can you love a country where mass spread fear across the population? Can you love a country where 70% of the people without by ICE have no criminal record? Can you love a country where science scholarship is undermined? Can you love a country where entire civilizations are threatened with extinction? Can you love a country where law firms and universities? And everybody said, no, 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 no. My attitude is perhaps different. And when I thought about this, that this is like a child. If you're a parent, you have a child that has a devastating diagnosis. Might be angry, might be grief, there might be fear, there might be pain. But in all of this pain and anger and development, I think all of us as parents choose to love our child, perhaps even with more intensity. So perhaps you could do the same thing with the country, where things go wrong. Love it with more intensity, love it with more passion, love it with more resourcefulness, love it with more clarity of mind, perhaps with more hope and more cooperation. That's the spirit which I would like to proceed. Very grateful. When I asked 3 fabulous folks to help us out tonight, they all said yes without any hesitation. So we have Matt Pierce, who represents Bloomington up in Indy. We have Zulich, who represents a bunch of people in Bloomington and the city council. And we have a fabulous student, Brookelyn Lambright, who I listened to and the speech that she gave last fall. And all of the themselves. Basically say, yes, I'm coming, I'm very, very grateful to be here. So each one of the speakers have about 8 or so minutes, give and take, and since we have such a huge group, we have to be very formal about the conversation afterwards. So afterwards, we have a conversation. And then we have a few people here from local community organizations. I'm going to say a few things about the organization. So if you want to get more information about those groups, if you want to help, you can sign up outside, and then that would be that. So without further ado, why don't the Dr. Matthew, Solutions Office, talks about group country.
My day job is a senior lecturer in a media school, so I have to prove I know how to handle the microphone. They'll kick me off the faculty. Okay, well, when I was asked to speak tonight about kind of what we think of our country and how we proceed from here and what's really important in this 250th anniversary of the founding of our nation, first thing that immediately came to my mind was the very beginning of the preamble of the Constitution of the United States, which says, "We the people of the United States, in order to form a more perfect union." And they didn't say to form a perfect union because they knew they couldn't reach perfection. The Constitution set out this aspiration that we would continue to perfect the nation and would become more perfect. But we know at the time that we had those words of aspiration that in fact it was far from perfect. And you might argue it's far from perfect today. But we had slavery, obviously, which after the Civil War became a century of Jim Crow laws. We had women who had to fight for their rights, right to suffrage, and other equal rights over time. And a lot of situations where we had an opportunity to make our union more perfect. And what I believe makes our country so great is that although it often takes too long, although it's often too much of a struggle, eventually we come to grips with some of the biggest problems confronting our nation. We address them and we fix them. We basically strive to make our country more perfect. And President Obama, back in 2008, you might remember, was campaigning for president, and the issue of race came up in the. He felt the need to make a speech in Philadelphia about race, and it became known as the More Perfect Union. I think it's interesting. And in that speech, one of the things that President Obama said is what would be needed were Americans in successive generations who were willing to do their part through protest, struggle on the streets and the courts, through a civil war and civil disobedience, and always at great risk to narrow the gap between the promise of our ideals and the reality of their time. And I think that is the key thing. Each generation, if our country is to continue to progress, to become more perfect, each generation has to recognize the imperfections of our country, and they must work to fix them. Progress. Once again, we probably won't ever get to the point of a perfect nation, but we have made progress in a lot of ways that made our nation more perfect. And what is so disturbing about the time that we live in now is it seems like we're backwards. And it's scary to kind of see maybe how quickly things can devolve. We always had the sense that our institutions were strong, and I don't think that we fully realized how much our democracy depends on individual office holders, people of power and authority, respecting the traditions and kind of the mores of our country. And what we've seen is you can have some things written on paper about how it's supposed to work, but if you don't have people who respect that, your nation can be at risk. And so our generation has to be willing to step forward, because the key to our greatness as a country, recognizing our imperfections and trying to fix them. And really, if we look back, most every generation has had to face imperfection and sacrifice a lot to keep our country progressing forward. Whether it's what's referred to as the greatest generation, fighting off fascism across the country and preserving our democracy from external threats, whether it's the people we spoke of in the civil rights movement, women's rights movement, all of those attempts out there. Each generation was willing to step up and do their part. And so the question is, what shall we do in our generation? How will we try to make our country more perfect? And what should we focus on? And this is something where it's easy to kind of be paralyzed because there's so much going on. There's so many things that we need to correct at this point in time. And it's easy to become kind of paralyzed, just thinking about, where do I even begin? What do I confront? What do I work on? And as I look at it, we definitely have these most immediate things where we ask ourselves, will our democracy continue to function? Will full voting rights? Will it become so hard to vote that a lot of people just can't or won't kind of work the rules? I mean, there's to think about just in the mechanics of our democracy. But I think that while we certainly have to pay attention to that, maybe that's the ultimate battle to be fought. I really think when I look at it as state representative and from kind of talking to people and getting feedback from people, to me, the biggest threat right now to our nation is having an economy that seems to people behind. I think to me, kind of the core problem that we face. So if we're going to have a brighter future as a country, we have to have an economy where everyone can prosper. That means we have to do some hard work fixing problems. And to me, the core problem that we have as a nation is the government has evolved to a point where it seems reluctant to invest in its own people. Right? So at the state level, it's interesting because we can come up with hundreds of millions of dollars in short order to, in the name of economic development, support corporations. And the theory is that that will kind of trickle down and ultimately benefit the population as a whole. But I think that after kind of seeing that for the last 40 years, you can ask yourself whether that's really the case. And so I think that what needs to happen, what I would see as the biggest imperfection to be corrected at the moment, is to get back to the government willing to invest in its people. And that means not leaving people behind in our economy. And so I think these are fundamental areas that people are telling us they need help in, things that I think are important for our future. And the number one thing I think it starts with is education. Right? So we have to have a well-funded K through 12 public school system. And I think beyond educating our students, because the legislature is obsessed with workforce training and development, as if all the education system is supposed to do is make sure we have someone who can make a widget when time comes. But I think what real value, and again, the genius of our nation, having a system of common schools, and putting in our very first state constitution, there shall be a system of common schools. It took a while to make that a reality, but I think we missed the fact that when you have a diverse set of students, all different walks of life, different socioeconomic levels, you have them in a school together, learning about each other. That is what melds your country together. And so that alone is an important value when it comes to education, as well as what some people might call book learning. And then when you get up to the college level, there's no reason we have to have a country in which you have to go into tremendous debt to afford to get a fair education. There's no reason why it has to be that way. The government could be funding our universities. We could create a system in which college students don't have to have all this debt burden. I think that's be very helpful, investing in people. And then, I remember very clearly when there was a shift in supporting students going to college. So I began school here in 1980, and that was the very beginning of the Reagan administration. And up until that point, student loans, Pell Grants, which before that Pell Grants were called National Defense Student Loans. But the idea was that getting your citizens through college, getting a higher education, not only benefited that individual, but it benefited society as a whole. It would help us have a more educated, learned population, and this would end up advancing America as a whole. And in those 1980s, it kind of switched to, well, you know what? If you get a college degree, you'll probably earn more than those with only a high school degree. And you are going to be the main beneficiary of your education. Therefore, you should bear the burden of paying for your education because you are the one who will benefit. And so they took what was kind of a public good and they just turned it into a private benefit. And so we need to get away from that and actually students who want to go to school. Child care is just another example. We have an opportunity to ensure, one, that all children, no matter what their socioeconomic background, have an early childhood education that's necessary to be able to advance and keep up, and do well from K-12. All kinds of study and research about this, and how good it is for that. And in the process, it helps our economy in general because now both parents can be in the workforce if they choose to do that. That's a greater benefit. And so that's an investment we can make. Healthcare, I don't even know where to begin on that. I personally think that we could do a lot better with a universal single payer system than kind of this crazy system we have now. But others would argue with me about that. But the point is, as the United States of America, if we put our energy into solving this problem of how do we make sure that everyone has affordable health care. We're America. We have the power to innovate. We can figure this out. But we have to have the political will to do it. We have to be willing to invest in our people, and that's another area we'll be able to do it. Housing, another issue. We can helping people try to afford housing and make housing more affordable. So all of these things, I think, are examples of investments we could be making in people today. History shows that when we invest in our people, it strengthens our country. And so investment in individuals, investment in America, is an investment in our future. And that's what we should do. And I think if you look back, Franklin Roosevelt, during the New Deal, during the Great Depression, really no social safety net, nothing. And at that time, there was the political will to do something about it. Our problem. They would look at these problems and say, we have senior citizens that are in poverty. So let's have a social security system. Let's create a system that will work. All of the kind of leveling the playing field for the average person, right? So the wealthiest people are benefiting from the stock market. There are no rules and regulations, and figure out a way to have unemployment insurance, have workers' compensation, basically creating a social safety net. And then Lyndon Johnson, in the Great Society, he continued advancing that. What is our problem? We have a lot of seniors who don't have access to health care, so let's have a Medicare program. Let's have a Medicaid program for those who are unable to get access to health insurance. And so essentially creating a more robust social safety net. And so certainly you can argue that all these programs are not perfect. Maybe there's a better, more innovative way to do it, but is at times the government and the people demanding things, movements, social movements, got our problems addressed in one fashion. That's what we really need today. We need to have the generations that are on the planet at the moment working together to make our union more perfect. We need to create a movement and our governments at both the federal, state, and local level invest in our people And I think together, if we were to kind of build this movement, this move, we could generate the political will among our elected officials to actually focus on the problems that the public have solved. And we owe it to the previous generations who did the hard work of getting us to this point, of making our nation more perfect, of doing the really hard things, equality and the economic social safety net. All of that was done in the past, and we ought to be able, as the current generation, to be able to do this as well. We owe it to them. And the good news is, I don't think we have to fight a civil war to do it, or maybe even spend a lot of time in jail. But we do need to speak up, and we need to essentially seize political power through the constitutional systems we have in place, so we can redirect our government to do the things that we've done to help our people. I think we can do that and not have to make the tremendous sacrifice that this generation had made before. So I think that in the process of doing that, we can also reinvigorate our democracy, because so many people have checked out of the system because they just feel it doesn't matter who I elect, or this government is so far away and detached from me. There's no way that I can really, because I complain, they even vote, but I don't seem to get my problem solved. And because of that, a lot of people are checking out. So I think we had a broad social movement seeking to solve these very basic problems of our citizens. I think not only would that give people a purpose, but I think it would build hope, and I think restore people's faith in our democratic system. And I think that is maybe the greatest benefit of all. Even if you fall a little short of solving the very real everyday problems of people, I think you can show them that it's sense to create their government and have faith in your democratic system. So I would say now is the time for us to get started in building this new America, a perfect union. And the important thing, let's be able to say we did our part to make America as perfect as possible. Thank you.
Brooklyn, I would imagine after all the things that Matt said about education, you're not going to disagree too much. But Brooklyn's a student here at IU, and we're going to talk about her experiences, what she was told before she came to IU, her experiences at IU, and looking forward to hearing her thoughts on.
Your heart said. I'm a senior here at IU. I'm studying journalism and American studies. Um, I grew up in Indiana. I got my education in Indiana. What the educational climate is in the state. I first gave this at the P meeting. It was to faculty and students, and so the goal of that remarks today is to sort of complicate what we've been taught about how education should function. Imagine the ways that education can and should be serving us. So I'm going to start today by asking what may seem like a question, and that is, what does it mean to be a student? So almost all the time, that question has everyone except me. Growing up in a rural, conservative Indiana town of about 900 people, the top priority was not education, but rather acquiring skills that directly translated into a high-paying career. This is what has been one of the most frequently repeated phrases throughout my education. Making myself profitable to an employer was always at the forefront of my mind during high school and college. Many people in my family didn't go to college or even graduate from high school. Instead, they worked at local RV factories that offered to pay them nearly $50 an hour right out of high school. And if my peers did choose to pursue higher education, they were encouraged by administrators took me a degree program where a direct path. And I wanted all, I'm not going to stand up here and say that I'm any different. I wanted a typical 9-to-5 job after I graduated from college. I didn't want to worry about my finances or work a laborious, physically demanding job like I saw both of my parents do. Education, as it had been defined to me thus far, was about securing a job once the school was over. And that's just it. At some point, I had to get serious and stop enter the real world. Education was merely a stepping stone. Yeah. Education itself had no value otherwise. But the thing that I held down that I really loved learning. I used to tell my friends, my family, and my teachers that I'd be content if I could spend my entire life learning. So as I began college and worked toward my journalism degree, secrets was not. It kept me up at night. I felt like I had to live a double life. I mean, one part of me that was being told to earn a degree in something practical, and the other part of me that really wanted to continue building knowledge. Then I took a class in the Department of American Studies called What is America? This class had nothing to do with my major in media studies. All it offered was a chance for critical thinking about the United States and to question the dominant narrative. This class opened up an entirely new world to me. And for the first time, I got to define my education by asking questions and engaging in discussions that influenced my own personhood. For the first time, it offered a chance to see education as a tool for personal growth and a new way to relate to the world around me. I got to engage in shaping my own mind. So I took more classes like this, I read more books, and I wrote more essays than I had ever done before. I expanded my mind by thinking critically of the world around me, and eventually these classes and university studies department research opportunities that took me to the archives at the Sophia of Women's History in Northampton, Massachusetts, as well as an independent research project through the Center for Research on Race and Ethnicity in Society. I wrote a paper on Black women's personal narratives, such as poetry, personal essays, and their significance in Black feminist studies. I ended up combining my interests in media and American studies to produce a show with the local community radio station WFH. Created episodes about the student-led protests at the Meadow and the subsequent silencing of the students by illustrators. And I also created more historical episodes, including one about the origins and development of whiteness in America. For the first time, I felt like my own mind, of my education. In developing my own consciousness, I worked to create more spaces in my local community. And then, the Indiana legislature passed HB 1 last April. If you don't know, HB 1 is a bill that forced university departments across the state of Indiana to consolidate and eliminate programs that did not meet a certain number of enrollment. So once again, my education was in the hands of people who thought they knew what was best for me. Governor Braun, through his act, emphasized departments that offered the direct hit to employability. Governor Braun said, quote, "Well, I know where the good jobs are that have the highest wages. Those are the degrees that are going to be most important." My own American Studies department has been deemed impractical by the state of Indiana, a degree which has offered me so many pathways to exciting research, my critical thinking skills, and to contributing knowledge to my local. That is now considered disposable to state legislators because the value of education is only measured by ability. But if we judge education solely by its economic return, we may miss the importance of education as a tool to understand the needs of Americans. Shouldn't I, as a human being, have the opportunity to understand who I am in relationship to my country and the rest of the world? Without the pursuit of a broad education, my understanding of American history and culture would remain one-sided. I would know the lives and ideas of so many important and formative Americans. Rather, my ignorance would remain an integral part to my formation as the perfect worker. Young people like me deserve the authority to shape their own minds, whether it's a career, the pursuit of knowledge, or something else entirely. legislators are no longer allowing us the autonomy to make these decisions for ourselves. Their trust lies in profits and capital rather than the young people who shape our very state, nation, and eventually the world. In total, 500 degree programs were consolidated, suspended, or eliminated across Indiana's public colleges and universities. 584. And I understand that some of you may see this as an act of efficiency to streamline taxpayer dollars with programs with higher enrollment numbers. You may even see enrollment as evidence that something with the program or department isn't working. Purdue University's provost Patrick Wolf described consolidation and relocation efforts as a type of accountability in which they strive to support taxpayers, employers, educators, and citizens in the best way possible. As a student who has lived in Indiana all my life, I've heard these arguments repeatedly. I understand that many across the state see efficiency and profitability as the top priorities for higher education. For the majority of my life, higher education this way. We are conditioned to believe that the primary goal of education is to obtain a high-paying job. But I am asking you today to imagine with me. I'm asking us to strive for a university that sees the development of young minds, cultivation of critical thinking as its highest priority. While I'm not admonishing the importance of income and the means through which we all earn a living, I am instead suggesting that universities recognize the importance of developing individuals with critical minds and well-rounded minds. I'm advocating for a world in which the arts, humanities, and languages are not seen as secondary pathways or unnecessary degrees. We must remember that arts, humanities, and language programs offer skills beyond what can be measured. Soft skills offered by these degrees include communication, problem solving, empathy, ethical decision making, research analysis, creativity, and teamwork, all of which are also vital to the highly paid jobs and society. So let us question the state's push to employ numbers to distinguish of a degree. While the state says this consolidation and elimination is to preserve taxpayer dollars, it's still unclear how much the state is saving in funding or whether any of these savings will be reached. Once again, profits are used to justify the expansion of vital liberal arts programs that provide students with the necessary skills for their own development and therefore community development. We must stop them from dismantling education in Indiana. Our future depends on young people like myself having access to a quality liberal arts education, one that helps us make sense of the world and our place in it. Caring about the preservation of our ability to guide our own education starts with standing alongside those working to protect higher education in the state. I am asking all of us to make our voices heard. Education and equal access to it is essential for each and every one of us.
I'm going to say something that my ideas is being heretical among my econ faculty. I'm actually convinced that if we offer education to young people and let them figure out what is in their own interest, and let them ask, and let them find their own answers, perhaps with the help of some old people with gray hair, that is actually good for the country. Because I'm convinced that if you let young people do that, they will find themselves. And that is what makes America great. So thanks. Sydney, you're up next.
Is this good?
Yeah.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I hope you've enjoyed yourself thus far. My name is Sydney Zulich. I'm 23 years old, and in 2023, I made the first elected to the Bloomington Council. always an honor for me to speak at events like this because I know how inspired I feel after leaving one. I love Bloomington, and I am so grateful to have been given the chance to succeed here. But I am very, very aware that the same luxury is not most of the other postgraduates that we have in our community. My perfect Bloomington is one that every young person is given the same opportunities to succeed that I was given. The chance that I was given was truly once in a lifetime, but in a thriving community, opportunities are not rare, they are plentiful. I'm not there yet, that's okay, but let this be the moment that you feel called to action. When the world feels like a dark place and our country's problems feel insurmountable, it is our local community that reminds us why hate is very good. The antidote to hate is very rarely more hate. We must instead fight back with joy. Sometimes that joy looks like marching and protesting, but most of the time, our joy is peaceful. It looks like volunteering for the breakfast at your local homeless shelter, helping to ensure that our most vulnerable populations have food in their bellies. It looks like joining a city or county commission and advocating for the issues that you care about. And it looks like running for office, taking up space in rooms where many of our perspectives are often discarded. There are over 60 elected officials in this town. Some positions are flashy, some are less so, but they're still critical to our infrastructure. Not every elected official is dynamic. Some are soft-spoken, some are abrasive. Very few are a happy medium. There's no specific sound or style that comes with running for or holding office. And most of us didn't study political science, myself included. So we're educators, we're doctors, we're lawyers, tradesmen, farmers, stay-at-home parents. The only thing that we all have in common is that we were brave enough to try, brave enough to fight in some cases. So once upon a time, I was approached with running, like many of my colleagues have been. It wasn't something I ever expected for myself until someone else believed in me. The people in my life knew that I was capable of becoming something more. They pushed me to do it. So just in case someone or a few someone's in this room hasn't heard it yet or needs to hear it, I'm going to take this opportunity to say, all of you, run for office. You don't need to be fearless. You don't need to have all of the answers. But I believe that you're here today because you know that the United States and America has a better future in store. And we need more leadership to get there. So run, fight, win, and serve your communities. So for those who are apprehensive, like they're not ready, I get it, I've been there. But we must look no further than former President Harry Truman, who shared his experience as a new politician. In his own words, he says, I remember when I first came to Washington. For the first 6 months, you wonder how the hell you ever got here. For the next 6 months, wonder how the hell the rest of them ever got here. I can't speak for others, but I have had a very similar experience to former President in that regard. And so we all have our doubts. But I have to encourage each of you to take a chance on yourself. You will never know your full potential until you're realized. And I promise that you are much more powerful than our education system. It would be my honor to help you step into your power. So if anyone would like to contact me, my cell phone number is 614-448-8154. That is 614-448-8154. No one got it the first time. I'm more than happy to sit down and discuss with anybody what our community offers and where someone might best fit their powers. So I'll leave you with this. Shirley Chisholm, first Black woman to ever be elected to the United States Congress, put it best. Service is the rent that we pay for the privilege of living on this earth. Well, y'all, rent is due. So whatever that service looks like to you, I encourage you to be brave in your pursuit. Raise your expectations for yourself. Get involved, make a difference, and above all else, raise your voice. Because I would really like to hear what you have to say. And I imagine a lot of other folks would too. So you very much for your time. Thanks for being here, and I hope you have fun.
I think it's really hard to end in a more positive and joyful and cheerful attitude. Thank you so much. And I guess the religious too, there's an old wisdom that goes back thousands of years, which goes something like this. Just upon us to start the work, and there are plenty of opportunities to start the work. And it also says it's not upon us to complete the work. So Matt says it takes some time. We're not going to be perfect. We're not going to complete it. It is not our duty to finish the work, but then neither are we free to neglect. I think that sums up what all of our speakers told us. So you have a chance to have a conversation. I have a microphone. I imagine some of you will have questions. I will imagine some of you have comments. Feel free to speak your mind. When I thought about this, in my mind, there's too much divisiveness in this country, too much name calling. This is supposed to be a completely positive, hopeful, non-divisive perspective. I think it has been so far. So each one of us should be free to speak up. And if you want to have a comment or a question, I'll hand you the microphone. Perhaps you want to tell us your name and go at it. What's your name?
Hi, my name is Angela Glum, and I guess priorities. And I guess it goes to you, Matt. Wondering, started education. So is that the number one? Healthcare, childcare, all those things, and it's hard to pick where right now where we get when you get this education or where we need to go.
Yeah, I think that try to get a chat. I think to me, education is the key, because you can talk about education in the more formal, like earning degrees, advancing through the process, but I think education also includes informing people on what their government is doing, what this impacts their lives, and then also providing them with the information they need to figure out how do I get involved or how do I change it. So education on both those levels is really important. But I think that people engage, because I know right now people are like, will our democracy survive? What will be happening in the next election cycles? Will someone manage to subvert the system to the point where it doesn't function anymore? And so you might say, well, why are you worried about education, housing, and all that stuff? Because our very democracy is at stake. But I think the reason why our democracy is fragile is because so many people have checked out. And so I think you have to give people a reason to want to get involved and to want to make our system really work, and to fight through the barriers that are being raised at being able to vote, whether it's getting the right ID, getting registered, showing up to vote in the right place. There are all these twists and turns just to show up and cast your vote. And so to get people to be willing to learn how to fight through that and make sure the vote counts, you have to give them a good reason to vote. So I think this idea of let's have an America, let's have an Indiana where we invest in our people and we address these real direct problems we face, I think that might engage them involved in democracy, and then you have the power of numbers and you have people involved. So I think that's how you end up.
I have a question. This is a question for Brooklyn. I wanted to ask about, my name's Kate Steger, and I wanted to ask you as a future journalist, you talked about, developing having the power to develop your own critical thinking. And as a future journalist, I wanted to ask you about media. And I want to know what your thoughts are on how the algorithms are shaping our ability to think, and what you think you do about it as a journalist, and how you will handle that as a journalist.
That's like the question on every journalist's mind right now. Algorithms are really reshaping how young people are getting their news. And I think part of what Matt was talking about with the increase our education is also to increase our media literacy. Media literacy is vital for everyone, not just young people, but especially in the wake of algorithms. It's really important that we understand how to fact check, how to check multiple sources, how to verify the information we're getting, where journalists need to get their information. Obviously, those are things that we're taught in the media school, but those are vital things that every American should have access to. And so, I guess, as a journalist, algorithms, I mean, if people want to be stuck in their algorithms, there's not a whole lot we can do about that. Because my priority as a journalist is always just putting out stories that I think are vital to local communities. Covering local communities is super important. There's a lot of news deserts that are happening across the state and across the country. And so trying to fill those news deserts with things that are impacting local people is really, really important in the age of social media.
That kind of goes with what Sydney was saying too about the importance of the local community. So I really appreciate that because I feel a little bit in conversation mode here, but I feel like that's where we have the only power. You know, other outside of a road, we live in this local community and have to power the local community. Appreciate the focus on that. Thanks.
I don't feel like this has been mentioned, but something I've been awakened to is this APAC Israel money. That has to stop. I am just, before I learn about it, we give all our money to this rogue state, and the state is taking us just down into the gutter. I mean, we're at war now because of that state. How does that money, how do we stop that? Because it's infected everything in our country. There's not probably a politician that doesn't take APAC, some form of money. You know, I thought they were going to try to curb how many of these groups can come into the White House and these lobbying groups. Stop that crap. If the government doesn't, I don't know how to get the government out because we have a very infected, sick government right now. And it's painful for me to see because it's hurting these young people. These young people don't have the opportunity that we had, you know? And it's sad because we get so much better. But we got to get if we're going to put politicians in there, one thing that I demand now is no corporate money. That has to stop. Because if you take corporate money, then you have to bow down to the, you know, if I was to take money from you and you said, oh, by the way, I'm going to help you with this. And then after a while you said, but by the way, I need you to meet. It's sick. So how do we stop that? Education is wonderful, but these poor students are in debt up to their eyeballs. Why can't we have free education in this country? Israel has free education. Why can't we? So anyway, I've got burrs up my butt. Burrs up my butt. But I'm willing to go for it. I'm willing to do whatever I need to do to help educate people because a lot of people don't even know about APAC. What's it? Okay, let me stand here and share.
Hi, I'm Jenny Bass, and I'm actually, Gerhard invited me to come on behalf of Hoosier Action. And let me just, person. And I know that as CS at the State House. And I'm really inspired by the words that you use about a more perfect democracy, more perfect union. And how do we do that in India? How do we take it down a notch and include people who haven't been included in this process? I mean, education, healthcare, harm reduction, these things that are so important to people in their homes, and yet they're not voting. They haven't been included and they feel left out. So one of the things Hoosier Action does is to create community organizations just for Indiana people, just for Hoosiers, to give people the tools so that we can go to the State House, talk to our state representatives. We can go to Washington and talk to our federal representatives. And we don't care if you voted for Trump or if you voted for Biden. We care about what are the issues that affect you in your home, in your community, and how are we going to make a better Indiana? We're going to come together in small rural communities and protect our rural hospitals, protect our own healthcare, protect SNAP benefits for children. So it's really a little more basic, and it's a little more about how it affects people and directly in their families. And how do we get those people to participate? Who may not be going to college right now. So, and that's a lot of people. And remember that 40% of, maybe over 40%, you do better than I do, of our voting population here is independent. They're not Democrats or Republicans. How do we encourage people to speak up and to represent their own best interest? So that's what we're doing at Hoosier Action, organizing small communities and then doing some more global, more statewide. So I encourage you to get involved, and I'll leave these.
But this is an example of how enthusiastic Hoosier Action members are. I was going to ask various members of local groups to speak on their behalf later, but enthusiasm is always a good thing. So we have one representative, Jenny, from Hoosier Action. We also have a representative from the League of Women Voters, in the business of informing voters for a long, long time. And then we have two other groups here. I'll say a few things. There are going to be sign-up sheets outside, so if you want to get more information, or if you're convinced you want to jump right in and become a member and help out, you can do that too. So, legal.
Good evening. My name is Marion, and I am on the leadership team for the League of Women Voters. And Jenny actually gave us the our mission is to empower people to vote. We encounter a lot of people at fairs, at town events, who think that they are registered to vote, and in fact they are not, or they're registered to vote somewhere else. They think a week before they can hoof it to the license branch and sign up, and that is not happening here. So we, on a regular basis, have events where we register people to vote, or help people to get registered to vote. We also, during election years, sponsor forums where we invite candidates from both parties to answer questions. We have our meetings in public places like schools, the library. For example, there is a meeting at the library on April 14th, and it would be great to see all of you there. And here it's a forum where all the candidates from one party have agreed to join us and ask questions about technology and the environment. A few days ago, we had with similar or the same candidates talking about the state of healthcare in this state. It was enlightening. There are entire counties in this state where if you call 911 after 6 o'clock in the evening, nobody comes because there is no emergency room, there are no rural hospitals. And at the end of the day, the only way we will change this picture is if we get people to vote. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan organization. We have Democrats and Republicans on our board. So we do not endorse particular candidates. We do endorse particular positions about health care, housing, child care, education, but we do not endorse particular candidates. And our current challenge in this state is that when we sponsor forums, it is more likely than not, it is only the current opposing party that shows up. So we are not able to present a clear picture to the people who are interested in information. And there is another item that we will not change unless we vote in significantly larger numbers than we currently do. If we have representatives who are so sure that their party will win every district, but one or two in this entire state, nothing will. So again, we are the League of Women Voters. We hold quarterly meetings at St. Thomas Lutheran Church, where we invite local speakers to come and talk to us about issues that affect us as voters and us as citizens. And they are open to the public. They are on the second Tuesday of, I want to say, once a quarter. If you log on to the website for the League of Women Voters, Bloomington, Monroe County, you can see all the events that we sponsor and all the meetings that we have where we invite local people. I would greatly appreciate if you spread the word and participate. Thank you very much.
Thanks. You also have representatives here from two groups that are perhaps more specialized focused. So one of those is the AUHI. And Annabelle, you're going to say a few things about what AUHI stands for and what you guys do.
Hi everyone, I'm here with Ahi. We're advocates for the unhoused and housing insecure at AU University. We're a relatively new club, so we try to get involved in issues in Bloomington. So just a few months ago, we were able to build a pretty impressive base of students who are really, really great. They are really getting engaged in how to not only work towards like short-term solutions housing issues in Bloomington by like volunteering at the overnight shelter a lot, but also towards building long-term sustainable solutions. We've been able to advocate a bit against recent like legislation that is really going to harm a lot of people, and we're really interested in how people can work for sustainable solutions in our community. So I'm great. I'm excited to see where it goes. Really great students, really great people to work with. It's been exciting.
I wanted to ask you how you're working with the city, and what connections you have with the city.
Yeah, right now, since we are pretty new, we don't have a lot of connections with the city. Personally, know more people, and I think people in our club, but I think looking forward, our club members would really like to get more involved. I think it would be great to have people at least like showing up to meetings where housing is discussed. I think that is very needed, advocating like for or against different policies, and also potentially working with the city through like meetings to think about how we can better implement solutions or respond to legislation. So since we are pretty new, our basis is low, but I think that can be expanded.
The other group is trees. About trees. They're called canopy. So John, things about canopy.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I've spent the second half of my career engaging communities, mostly through the arts. But right now I'm working with a small nonprofit that's doing amazing work here in Bloomington. It's bloomington.org. And we are trying to build a more sustainable and equitable urban forest here throughout the city. And we find neighborhoods that need trees the most. And we go in and we try to meet every single resident within those neighborhoods and convince them to take free trees for we're grant and donor funded. We have 2 more big plantings this spring, this Saturday and next Saturday, where we'll plant a couple hundred trees. So website. I also.
Thanks, John. And the last group is more broadly focused. I think it has something to do with resistance and singing. So Kate, you want to talk about it, or you sisters going to fight it out?
I'll say that. Oh, I can speak and she can sing. So we're going to split it up. Singing Resistance is a movement of singers who are committed to protecting and caring for our communities and protecting us from growing authoritarianism. And it really started in Minnesota this past winter, a kind of new movement, but it has its roots in very old movements. So civil rights battles across the world and across the country always use singing and music to sustain themselves. Bloomington just started a chapter. There are 250 chapters, like in 2 months, there were pop-up chapters all across the country. 250 of them now. And Bloomington has one, and we're just getting started. And the idea is that we will learn and teach and sing simple songs as part of political action, public actions to protect people, to build community, and to make our local community stronger. So with that, having said that, and feel good and bring joy and have something to do with protest other than the love. So here you go, Angela.
The other thing that I really like about Singing Resistance is that it is for non-professionals. I am not a professional singer. It's been years since I sang in a choir, but I love to sing. Today, I spent a lot of time with my 2.5-year-old grandson, and we did a lot of singing. And the earworm that is in my brain right now is, "We are the dinosaurs, march. We are the dinosaurs, make the earth flat." And so, that's not, I mean, we hope to see other songs like that. We were at the No Kings rally, and there were a lot of folks that, there are so many issues. So tonight, I just would like to invite you to sing with me just a short song that is one that Serena Partridge has been singing in Minnesota. And it goes like this. The future is calling, it's calling for vision, and the people will sing along, and the singing will make us strong. So try that with me, do it just a bit at a time. It goes like this, and there are several people in this group that already have been coming to some people gatherings, and we hope to have smaller where we can discuss the issues and support each other, issues that we think are important. So it goes like this. The future is calling. The future is calling. It's calling. It's calling. And we will sing along. And we will sing along. He will make us strong. And the singing will make us strong. Right, with another word. The future is calling for trees. The future is calling for trees. Let's do it again. The future is calling for action. The future is calling for action. For future is calling for votes. The future is calling for votes. The future is calling. The future is calling. It's calling for housing. For the future. For education. The future is calling for education, and we will sing along. We will sing along, and the singing will make us strong. The singing will make us strong.
This is probably a great week to stop. Singing for housing, for trees, for voting, for action, for education. Even though I was a little bit up, but I don't know so much. Thanks for coming. I'm going to hang around for a while. I guess I would even be tempted. There's probably a place close by that serves decent German beverages. So if you're old enough to formally. So thanks for coming. I think this has been taped, and I'm understanding is the tape will be available, shall we say, by tomorrow afternoon. So if I said anything, you can find that there, but it's going to be available. Again, thanks for coming, and there's going to be lots and lots of opportunities to make Bloomington and this country a better place. I think that's the spirit of Steve can take it away from you. Thank you.